It's Friday afternoon. It's 4 o'clock. You look outside and you see a whole lineup of trucks just show up. You know you want to get out of there. Your team wants to get out of there and you want to go home, but you know you got to finish those trucks, get them out of there, and you know it's going to be a long night. If that sounds familiar, we're going to talk about in this video how to stop that for good. When we get to about the 5 o'clock mark, we know that we're starting getting into overtime. That's when productivity goes down and injuries occur. Not only that, it's really tough on your team. And by replacing one person, that hard cost is $18,000 per person. That's something to think about when you're actually looking at how hard I'm pushing the team just to get those extra couple of loads in on that Friday night. And you do so week over week, your staff is going to start getting a little bit of that burnout and could cost you, like I said, that $18,000 per person, which is a pretty insane number when you think about it. So let's keep you from losing productivity and your team. There are a bunch of solutions that people use, and we're going to go through what works and what doesn't work. Mandatory overtime. Once we get into the 50 or 60-hour work weeks, we start seeing performance drop and injuries occur. So it's really important to keep those hours at least under the 55-hour per week. Getting temporary workers to fill in the gaps is a band-aid solution that will not work for you in the long run. It's going to put a lot more stress on your supervisors and team to get those people up to speed, and they still will not be at the same level of what the rest of your staff is. Using pay incentives like bonuses works well at the beginning. However, it doesn't minimize the health and safety risks that are coming down the pipeline, and also that burnout. As you put more and more pressure on those key members to deliver and get those goods through the door, it's just going to push them further and further into that burnout mode, which again, in the long term will not work. Shifting loads and goods to a 3PL or an off-site warehouse works in one aspect. That's going to give your team a little bit more movement within the facility. However, you're still going to need those operations and procedures to track those goods and know where they are. So you're shifting from the floor level of being able to move around. Now it's the rest of your operations team to track those goods and make sure you know where they are and get them in and out effectively. If you have all your operations flowing, you understand where all your goods are at any given time, this could actually work for you. However, from what we've seen in the industry, this puts a lot more stress on the team, and usually a lot of teams don't have that infrastructure in place to actually know where those goods are off-site and making sure that that flow goes to where it needs to be. So it's going to cause a lot of congestion and headaches at the end of the day. The next thing that people try is rising individual quotas and implementing surveillance tech. With that, what they're looking for is seeing how efficient their employees are working and making sure that they're optimizing to the best that they possibly can. Amazon is the original company that really started bringing in surveillance tech and picks onto their team and making sure that they're working at the most efficient level possible. The downsides to this is that it puts a lot more stress on the team, and it's easy to overanalyze and get rid of some team members before you're working with them and optimizing. So we go back to that replacing an employee that we were talking about before, where $18,000 per employee when you replace them. If you have that constant turnover, that's a lot of money that you are pushing out the door each time. 4-day work weeks is up next. What we've seen is some companies shifting over to that 12 or 10-hour day. Some employees will like that. However, once you get past that 8-hour workday, you're going to start seeing that drop in productivity. And as we know, that affects the bottom line. Up next, we have one that does not work at all, and that's putting a cap on resources and time. So what would happen is saying, hey, we're only going to allow X amount of overtime per employee, no matter what. Really what you're doing is just shifting everything down and putting a lot more pressure from everyone from the top down to get things done. And it is not going to work. The last point is the one that actually will work for you. So currently you have a bunch of trucks coming in at the end of the day and the beginning of the day, and maybe a couple of spikes in between. So those in between, now you have people sitting around not doing things, and you're not optimizing your team. Instead, if you spread out the loads throughout the day, what's going to happen is you can have your team rolling and working on loads throughout, then getting more productivity in the long run. So the first step to actually implementing this and making it successful at your facility is making appointments mandatory. Now, you may be doing a few appointments here or there, or still first come, first serve. The first step is making sure that every single appointment that shows up is documented. You can start off by using an Excel spreadsheet, whatever that looks like, but having those appointments booked so that you know what's coming in. Also, when those appointments that show up that don't have an appointment, you gotta note those down so you can start seeing who's actually performing and who's conforming to what you're trying to do at the end of the day. The second point that is really important once you get that first one implemented is now looking at and measuring these appointments. So you've got your Excel spreadsheet, you know who's coming in and who actually didn't make appointments, but now let's get some times down to when they actually showed up and how long it took to get them out the door. With that, we can start looking at some KPIs and seeing who's performing well, who isn't, and then getting a general picture of what's happening at your facility. This is a really, really big, important step to seeing what we need to do in the future. The third step is now we have some data. We can look at how long loads are taking and all the different types of loads, if there's any variabilities in duration or who needs to come at a certain time. Now you can look at staffing. So now you'll have this Excel spreadsheet, you'll have the numbers, and you can start saying, okay, throughout the day, because my loads are spread out, I need X amount of people to be staffed each day. And you can start comparing those KPIs together, and you can start putting together your labor forecasts of who needs to be on each shift. The fourth point is now that we have these KPIs, what are we going to do with them? So we now can see how much labor we need, how long things are taking, but now we need to take that step of actually implementing things that are going to help improve. So looking at things like what are the differences in loading or unloading times with different shift or different personnel, and seeing what type of things you can come up with. And also, what are our turnaround times in general? Do we need to improve on that? Is there some issues with certain customers or carriers that we need to look at? Now is the time to take all that information and start implementing things. Now, the big thing is to remember, don't put in 30 new things each week. Start off with one thing, really improve on that, see how it's looking for that week, and build upon that each week, week over week. Now, the last part is how do we improve the bottom line? Now that you've looked at all the performance increases that you're going to have from trucks getting in and out quicker, staffing the right number of people, do you need to get some new equipment in there to help optimize it? That is something you should be looking at. And then also, do you need to lower headcount at some points now? So what you're going to start seeing is you're spreading those loads throughout the day. Everyone's working at a constant pace. You might be able to reduce headcount by a little bit. That's the time to really look into it and help that bottom line. So when we look at what we're talking about for those 5 steps, it seems like a lot of work. And it can be, but there are ways to really help out your team and optimize this so that is not as much stress on your team. One of the biggest things is software. If you get a good system that can come in and optimize the flow of materials coming in and out and help with that labor control, it's going to make it way easier on your team. That is something that we focus in on, and we'd love to help you guys out on that. At DataDocks, we have our dock scheduling software that gives us a lot of insights to how our customers are utilizing this platform to optimize their facility. Here's some of the information that we've found out. We've seen on average, people who have implemented DataDocks have gone from 18% of paid overtime hours down to 5% overtime hours. Think of the bottom line and how much that's going to help your team. Labor costs on retail orders have gone down from $2.25 to $1.85 when we've seen our customers utilize DataDocks. The average dwell time we saw from customers that came to us before using DataDocks was 98 minutes. After starting to implement and utilize the software, we saw that go down to 48 minutes. That allowed them to actually get through a higher percentage of trucks with the same amount of staff. One of the most important things is keeping a strong staff and team. By implementing this scheduling strategy, employees really liked it and it started showing in the numbers. Employee turnover went from 32% down to 22%. If you think about it, a third of those people that would have quit didn't quit. Out of all the solutions that we've talked about, we've seen dock scheduling work the best out of all of them. Give dock scheduling a try and let us know how it works for you. If this video was useful for you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more information like this.